Okay, welcome to our fifth session. Today we're going to talk about the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, Tantric Buddhism. And, when we talked a few weeks ago about the different schools, we talked a lot about what the Buddha taught, very contradictory things. He taught some people this, some people that. And he told the people up front, I'm going to be teaching you some things that, might not make sense to you, but I'm teaching these, other things for you, what have you. He taught Tantra to very, very few. I don't think it's not saying that, the Tantric practitioners were better. The Buddha said that there's not one type of person, and you can't expect these teachings to just fit. So he gave people things that they could, systems that they could better understand. He didn't teach any of this till 16 years after his enlightenment. And one thing, it was to remain secret. And until, I would say, the mid-1980s, most of these things, nobody really heard much about, because even, people in the West that were practicing, their teacher would give them the teachings, and that would be, he would choose what is best for you and what is not, and then the tradition has certain ones. But it was not, a lot of things were secret, and it wasn't out of any type of cult or type of thing. It's like there was people, just pouring some water here. The secret stuff leads some people to get thinking, that it's, ritualistic and all sorts of things. And there's rituals, but it's not anything that, you would get in trouble for doing. By the 7th century, Buddhism was the largest form of Buddhism practiced in India. Pretty much everybody there was practicing Tantric Buddhism. But one thing that was really interesting to me is that some of the first people that the Tantric practitioners reached out to, Vajrayana practitioners, were the most despised people. India has that caste system. Still today, it causes grief. But, and if you aren't familiar, the caste system is what you're born into is what you're going to stay. If you're born, in very poor and poverty, you just accept being poor and poverty for this lifetime and hope for the best the next. But they were some of the first to become, I think you could say, converted from Hinduism. By the 13th century, though, both Buddhism and Hinduism were all but dead. And this was due to the Muslim invasion of that time. I think it's interesting that the Buddha himself he exactly gave you the date, not necessarily the time, but he gave the exact time, date or area of when Buddhism was going to die out in India. And it's also said that the Buddha has to have said that he foretold that Buddhism would flourish in the land of the snow. There's two prophecies we're going to be talking about today. Keep that one in mind. Because the land of snow was always considered the Himalayan area. And people in the Himalayas didn't seem like, to some people it could be Buddhist material. How did Buddhism, and we're talking today about Vajrayana Buddhism, and I'm basically focusing in on the Tibetan situation. And I don't, though, want people to think that nobody else practices Tantric Buddhism and it's never been practiced anywhere else. There's still sects in China and Japan that practice some form of Vajrayana. They're not practicing the Tibetan system necessarily, but the Shingon, that in Japan is a Tantric group. Mongolia is very much, it's very Tibetan Buddhism there, because Tibet, when we talk next week about Dalai Lamas do, there's a lot of, not just Dalai Lama, but several other, the Khan family and Buddhism go together in several very unique ways, which we'll be talking about next week, or the week after. The early 16th century king, Songsten Gambo, married two women, one from China, another from Nepal. Both were Buddhist. He became a devout Buddhist. By the mid-century, he was regarded as a manifestation of the Avalokiteshvara. Chinese Chan Buddhists and Indian practitioners both came to teach in Tibet, which was Tibetan area now. But the thing that the Tibetans seemed to be gravitated to was Indian Buddhism. And when you talk about someone becoming a manifestation of the Avalokiteshvara, there are several people today, we especially talk about Dalai Lama, that are considered manifestations of Avalokiteshvara. Avalokiteshvara is the bodhisattva of love and compassion. And if you are a Tibetan practitioner, it's a male and you call it Chen Renzing, and in the other Singon stuff, it's Chen Renzing or Avalokiteshvara, whatever their native language is. There's a lot of people, groups and sects, especially in the lesser vehicle. And not all of, let's be fair, all of Mahayana pretty much too, is the Avalokiteshvara is called Kuan Yin, and it's female. These bodhisattvas can manifest in many, many different ways. It's not just what it's not like, okay, I'm going to be the manifestation of Avalokiteshvara and this one for this lifetime and don't bother me because I can't do anything else. The Avalokiteshvara can manifest in anybody. But, it's kind of interesting here. These two women are basically the inspiration for Dharma coming to the Himalayan region. And it's interesting that, these sects have not always been so nice to women. We talked about that in one of the classes when we talked about sexual misconduct. The next king, he didn't like this Dharma, and it started to die out. He was not being supported by, a lot of, I think that Songsten Gambo sponsored a lot and kept, some monasteries rolling. Monasteries don't just, you got to have something to live on. They have to have some help. And I think that what the next king did is he just kind of, we're not helping you. And it died out. It was only, from what I understand, it was only outside of the cities. It was in little pockets and communities of nomads. And the Bon religion, that's the first religion of Tibet. Bon is what the Tibetans practiced for centuries. That became the most common religion again. The Bon system, it's a system now in Tibetan Buddhism, but it's a religion that is very similar to the indigenous Indian, Native American Indian religion. There's a lot of shamanism to it, and there was some ritual, and that became the religion again. Buddhism dies out, and they bring back the Bon. However, the next king, Trisong Dinsen, when he became the king, he not only returned the Dharma to prominence, he made it the official state religion. And at certain times throughout, Tibet's got a very, very interesting history of Buddhism coming and Buddhism going. This is not, this isn't anything new. But at certain times it has become, the religion has become also, the state religion, and eventually the president, there is some sort of a king still, but the president, the person running the show is some sort of head of a Buddhist school in, of their areas. Sometimes the Sakyas were controlling certain areas, the Kagus certain areas, and then the Galupas took everything in one way or the other. And we're going to talk all about that at some point in time. But what remained of Dharma was a mess. It was in tatters. There's a lot of untrue doctrine, a great deal of corruption. And the king realized that what was there, what was left of there, was not even anything remotely, this was not good. This was not true Dharma. So he wanted some teachers from India, and he wanted them to come and say the Dharma, and he lucked out. Some people say it was just by magic. Around this person we're going to be talking about, Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava, is a very good time to understand what we've been talking about with relative truth and absolute truth. There are a lot of mythical things a lot of people, one of my dearest teacher, he believes most of these mythical things happened, and he was kind of like me, being a bit skeptical, but I mean, I'm not saying I believe all of it, but there's some very, very fascinating things that have happened in Tibet, and, with High Lamas, that died here, the Karmapa died here, last Karmapa, and they're fascinated about, when we talk about Dalai Lama, we're going to talk about this embodiment stuff of these beloved bodhisattvas. But Padmasambhava comes, and it's pretty much like a miracle. He came to Tibet and helped the king. I think we said that again, but the legend, the myth is that, I don't know if we should use myth, I'll get in trouble. Padmasambhava was said to be born at 8 years old on lotus. And he was picked up and raised by a very royal family, and that's about as far as the story we need to go with that. But he was a fully enlightened being. There's no doubt about Guru Rinpoche being a fully enlightened being. He came from Mahayana, which was then part of India. Today it would be part of both Pakistan and Afghanistan. There were some Muslim issues at that time there. When we talk about, him, the myth says he came and slayed the demons. And, some people think that is literal. But most people believe that what he did do is he came in there and he cleaned up the Dharma. He got a system of Vajrayana practice instilled and laid out. But what you're talking about, some of this other stuff, this slaying demons, I think that the Padmasambhava introduced Tantric Buddhism to Tibet as far as these deities, these certain deities that he came up with, but I think some of them, he did weave the bond faith into the system. And I think that was a very wise thing to do, because it helped people that were in the bond be less, intimidated or overwhelmed with the Tibetan tradition or the Vajrayana tradition. And it was probably, something that kind of helped the two come together and mix. He wrote and translated many, many texts, and a lot of them he hid. And he said that when the time was right for them to be taught, they will be found. And from my understanding, early 1900s, they were still finding little gems that Guru Rinpoche had hidden. Some people believe he wrote the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And if you're not familiar with it, the Tibetan Book of the Dead is, what happens to you when you die. It goes through the whole, the whole bardo, whole situation. And why it is such a wonderful book is when you read it and you understand what to expect when you die, that also gives you, how you need to be living. Now I know how I need to be living, because I want to make sure if this is what's going on in the bardo, I want to be prepared. And Bob Thurman he translated a wonderful version of it. There's several different translations of this book. Sogye Rinpoche, he thought about this too, of learning how to live, because he wrote a book called the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, which it was one of the first books that really caught my eye and got me interested in Dharma. And when he brought this system in, he also created a sect. He's created a sangha that was going to be practicing just what he taught, and they were called the Nyingma, and they are still there today. It's the very first sect or school of Dharma. If you're listening to me and there's pausing, I'm having some water. And I mentioned something about prophecy earlier. This is one of Padmasambhava's prophecies. He said, when the iron bird flies and the horses run on wheels, the Tibetan people will be scattered like ants in the wind. The Dharma will flourish in the land of the red-faced people. It seems, it's pretty cut and dry. I mean, most people who figure out iron bird flies, horses on wheels. And, the thing is in Tibet, it wasn't, shortly after they saw cars and they understood what planes were, it wasn't very long after that all hell broke loose. And when I talk about some of the mythical things, this is a handprint, and there are a couple other boot prints that are said to be where Guru Rinpoche touched. And, you know, you look at that, and people have been trying to figure that out for centuries. That's not something that just happened overnight. That's been something that people have been talking about for centuries. And from what I understand, to this day, scientists have no idea how that happened. So, you know, Tibet is a land of, there's a lot of myth, but the thing about some of the myth is that it can surprise the hell out of you because some of it might just be true. There was other great teachers that came from India. Atisha, he wrote some of the very standard, some of Atisha's writings are the standards still today. Naropa came, and Tulopa, but he came from India. And I put Naguma up here. She is she's what's called a Dakini. That's kind of like a miniature wrathful teacher that comes out of the sky. It's the best description I can give about it right now. But she came and she brought the whole teaching, a whole system. And why I put her up there is because Tibet has not been very nice to the women in the Sangha. There's been a lot of problems. The Dalai Lama talked a great deal about it, trying to see if there could be some changes made. But so Naguma, you know, she came and gave this complete system. Many people believe that Naguma was the sister of Naropa. And then we need to, nothing would be about past Tibetan history without talking about Milarepa. Milarepa was a mess. He was kind of, you know, he poisoned members of his own family. He practiced black magic, which a lot of people were, you know, doing at that time. But then he started to have a lot of remorse. And he went to a teacher, he was begging, and he finally knew the Gampopa. He used to do, if you know, I could, this is Gampopa here, obviously. He knew that things would work out for him if he could just get Gampopa to teach him. And Gampopa didn't give him the time of day. He ignored him, acted like he wasn't there, wouldn't communicate. And, you know, this went on for some time. And, you know, eventually Naropa, he gave in. And, you know, there's story after story of him sending Milarepa to do something that you know is going to cause, you know, a commotion, or he's going to get beaten, he's going to fall. There's all sorts of things that Gampopa put him through. And Milarepa did all of them. And eventually Gampopa said, okay, I'm going to teach you. And Milarepa was a very quick study. And that has to do because of his devotion to Gampopa. We're going to be talking a little bit later in this discussion about devotion to Guru, or teacher. But Milarepa, he became the first Tibetan to become, at least the first one we really know, became the first totally enlightened being. And Milarepa, he lived his life in caves. You know, we talk about it, you know, the Tibetan tradition, you know, some people see my shrine room, and it's colorful. But, you know, it's like, the story of Milarepa appears to the Dalai Lama's eyes at a talk. And, you know, because of this just sheer devotion and the effort that he put in, you know, that's the thing. He put in the effort, and he reaped the rewards from it. But, you know, that was Milarepa, his temple was the cave. These drawings that you see, this is supposed to be one of the caves Milarepa was in, and they put little things there. But Milarepa, you know, what he visualized was his shrine. He didn't have anything, you know, nothing like that. He is green because the legend has it that was all he only ate nettles. And he turned kind of a green color. Now, we're going to start talking a little bit about how the methods of practice, and, you know, how there's 4 ways to practice, or methods of practice. That's a better way to say it. There's not just 4 practices, but there's 4 methods that are pretty much the backbone of Tibetan Buddhism. And a teacher, it's transmission, first is transmission and realization. And I'm going to also add the second one there is analytical and single point meditation, because these things go together. And, you know, the transmission means is the teacher gives you the teaching. He transmits the teaching to you. And then it's up to you to go and use some analytical and single point meditation to have the realization of what the teaching is. You know, we've done in this class, we've done the single point meditation. That's just when you look at one item and you just concentrate on that item. It's a single point. And then the next stage of meditation is analytical, where you meditate on something. You are looking at, you've taken this transmission you've got, you've done the practice, you do the practice, and there's a meditation part, and that's when you do your realization type meditation. The other two that go a great deal together is devotion to the Guru and skepticism. Now, the system, if you've seen lamas, high lamas, and even just lamas, you see people bowing and doing prostrations, and it's because, especially with Tibetans, they see, like the Tibetans believe, all of us to a certain degree. The Dalai Lama is respected every bit as much as the Buddha would be, because that's what your guru, when you finally find a teacher, you look at that teacher like he is the Buddha, or she is the Buddha. And we'll go back to that after this, but the other thing is skepticism. You don't believe what the Guru tells you until you try it out yourself. If the Dharma has been a big, there's a lot about the Buddha teaching, don't just believe anything, and when you're choosing a guru, you need to choose wisely, because sometimes, you're going to get stuck with that guru, and it's a relationship that you will have. You can have more than one guru. I took a lot of teachings from a lot of people, and I think that was the karmic situation, I guess, that was laid out for me. But you can have two gurus. Some people try to pick them up like they're at Ralph's picking up candy or something. But you have the skepticism, so you don't just jump in and choose the first one you see. It's kind of like you want to go find a specialist. You can try to find a psychiatrist. So you're not just going to put your mind in the hands of the first psychiatrist. Putting your mind in the hand of anybody but yourself is a pretty dangerous situation. So you have the skepticism, but then you find the Guru and you have that devotion to the Guru. And you have the relationship you have with the teacher of the Guru. That's not going to be how everybody's relationship is. And it's just nobody's business except you and your teacher what you're going to do. You hear the word Guru, and it still makes a lot of people my age and a few years older and younger cringe because of, we had some people here in the 70s that kind of made that word. It's scary. So you got the skepticism, the devotion to the Guru that work together, the analytical single point meditation with transmission and realization. There are different levels. There's many, many different levels of monasticism in Buddhism. Some people, there's lamas that are married, and that's okay. But I'm going to just give you the three fundamental of the monastic order. To be a lama, you've had to take a 3-year retreat under the direction of whatever sect or tradition you're following. After you do that, you are a lama. You can, lama simply means teacher. You can become a Gishi, and that is getting like a doctorate of Buddhism. It takes a long time to get there. So there's one guy here in the West, I believe, that he got the Gishi degree. But it's, you're like the professor. You have got the doctorate of, everything about that sect. You can talk about it in and out. Gishi there's not a lot of Gishis. And the Rinpoche, you hear that word a lot. So Rinpoche means reincarnated teacher. It's also called a toku. When we were talking about Mahayana Buddhism, you agreed to come back time after time after time until everybody's enlightened. Well, there are certain teachers that come back time after time after time. Like I said, our next class is Dalai Lama, Holiness the Dalai Lama. But he's probably the most famous reincarnated teacher. He's come 14 times. Karmapa's come 17 times. And, you know, that's the 14th incarnation. And you might say, well, then why isn't Dalai Lama called Rinpoche? Dalai Lama is a Lama, a Geshe, and a Rinpoche. 14, and he did receive, they didn't just say, you're the Dalai Lama, you can, skate here. He did, get a doctorate degree of Dharma. And, he's the Lama. So, but this is mostly so you understand if you hear these terms of Geshe Rinpoche, Tulku, reincarnated teacher. And those are the ones that basically, those are the three that are the most common that you hear. Okay, we talked about the sects, schools. And the very first one was Nyingma, and that's called the ancient one. Obviously, it's the first. I'm talking a little bit about how the person that is the head of the sect got there. With the Nyingma, it's just kind of by, from what I understand, it's just whoever is kind of, I don't know if they vote on it, but somebody just becomes. There's no, these other teachers we're going to talk about, there's some reincarnation footprints or, ways to go around this. But the Nyingma is the ancient one, and the most well-known teacher is Gyalpo Khyentse Rinpoche, who was, by the way, he was the Dalai Lama's teacher for this system, the Nyingma. And, this picture kind of captures him. He's up here. He was a big guy, but, he oozed compassion. And in a lot of his writings, I don't care what school you belong to, they will touch you. If you want to read some good stuff, go find something by Gyalpo Khyentse Rinpoche. And you know what? There's these four schools. I'll tell you, though, there's not much difference between them. Not much at all. The Kagyu, word of the Buddha. It was, the transmission only from student to teacher. And the leader of that tradition is His Holiness the Karmapa. And this is the 17th Karmapa. And there's a little bit of issue if this was the real Karmapa or not. We'll get into the he is the 17th Karmapa. There's no getting around that. He is also a manifestation of Chenrezig. Naropa, Gambopa, and Milarepa they were all key components of the Kagyu coming together. The way that the Karmapa is, he dies, and it's going to be the next Karmapa is going to run the show. So after 16th Karmapa died, he died in Chicago, and we'll talk about that another day. But the hospital staff, there's a documentary, if you ever see it, The Lion's Roar. It talks to doctors who were treating Karmapa while he died here. But how the Karmapa is chosen is he writes it down, and he puts it away. So when sometimes he hides it, so when the time is right. Now these guys, we believe they're fully enlightened beings, and they'd never tell you that. They'd laugh at you. But if anybody's a truly enlightened being, they're not going to tell anybody. You just are. You don't need to tell. But he leaves directions where he can be found, and they're very specific directions from, my Kagyu teacher, Rinpoche Rinpoche. He's dead. They're just very specific. And he's also considered a manifestation of Chenrezig. This guy is going to be somebody that is going to really do some great things, I think, especially with younger people. He's done, there's a new book out about his outreach that some kids from college here went to India and spent some time with Karmapa. The smallest sect is the Sakya, the Gray Earth sect, and the head of that sect is as holy as the Sakya Trinzen. It's a lot like the royal family. This is the Khon family. Khon was a king in Tibet at one point in time, and it had the Sakya region. And the Sakya Trinzen is the first son, the firstborn. He obviously is not celibate, but it's the firstborn, and if there's not male born, then it's gone, I guess, to the nephew. Maybe sometime now, if a woman is the firstborn, she gets the role if she wants it. The final sect is Galupa. It's called the Way of Virtue. Yeah, this is a sect the Dalai Lama belongs to, but the Dalai Lama is not the head of the sect. The head of the sect is the Ganden Tripa, and it's always the Ganden Tripa that's going to end up being the head of the sect when he gets of age. This school, this is the Dalai Lama school. He said we were going to do a whole bit about Chenrezig and Dalai Lama. But Dalai Lama is the head of all of these. He's the spiritual. He used to be the temporal and the spiritual leader, and today he's only the spiritual leader of the Tibetans. Jetsun Tsongkhapa is the one who founded this, I mention this because he's a very endeared teacher. He was considered a manifestation of Manjushri, and what he put the school together, the Kadampa school. There were some issues, and by the way, what you hear today is Kadampa here. That's not Tibetan Buddhism. He put together the Galupa, and the Galupas. When we talk about the political situation, the Galupas have ran Tibet for several centuries. It's a very interesting relationship they've had with other leaders in other countries. But so that's the Galupa, the Way of Virtue. Now there's a couple of the smaller sects, and the first is called Rime, and that's basically my sect. It's non-sectarian. I have two teachers. It's Holiness the Dalai Lama and Wangchen Rinpoche here. And one's Kagu and one's Galupa. And I've taken teachings in other systems, and I practice a little bit of, practices of both. And Kela Rinpoche, interestingly enough, my teacher was raised by Kela Rinpoche here. He wanted to really, and he did do a lot of things to talk, this non-sectarian, where everybody can get together and mesh and do things. Like this Shangpa tradition that he was the leader of, and the new Kela Rinpoche is the leader of now. It was the Shangpa. It's considered part of the Kagu, but it's kind of by just a little tiny bit. It's there's other things just besides the Kagu tradition. The Kagu practices that are included in that. Bon is the mystical religion that we talked about earlier, but it's got now Dharma, and it's still very mythical, and it has a lot of all Eastern religions intertwined through it. There's, I think, Surya Das, somebody told me that Surya Das considers himself a Bon practitioner. Don't take me for my word of that I don't know, but I've heard that. But it's a completely recognized school of Dharma today. Now, people talk to me about what school, what's best for them, and I don't know what's best for anybody except myself, and half the time I don't even get that right. But, they say, well, I want to do some things. I'm not sure I want to do this Tantra or this. Tantra, let's just for now on call it Deity Yoga. And we'll go into that here in a little bit. But they said, I don't want it. I don't know if I want to do that. And I just told them, well, don't. But if you want to try some things, there's a couple of practices that you can do. And each one of these, we're going to be talking about this and then another. But if you just, transmit it, spend some analytical time and some other, time, meditating on these 7 branches and the refuge, that's enough to do whatever you are here. You could become an enlightened being just doing these things. And I'm don't think that I'm telling you that, and then you just say, well, I'm going to do this, all day or next year, and I'll be an enlightened being. No, but it gives you an idea of what, because these are in all of the Deity Yoga practices, is a form of these refuge and 7-branch prayer. And we've talked about refuge. I go until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha by the merits of giving and taking. May I become a Buddha to benefit seven beings. If you've taken refuge from, I don't care what sect or tradition or anything, if you've taken refuge, you're considered a Buddhist. And, you can practice this, and if it feels good to you, then go find a teacher. This is not any secret thing I'm giving away. I want to make that point very clear. Don't run around and tell people that, you heard this secret teaching here. The seven branch prayer, it touches on every issue that you probably need to spend some time with. The first is I reverently prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. We're going to hear in a few minutes about prostrations, but prostrations that purifies pride. And second is I present clouds of offerings, actual and imagined. That is to cure, cheapskates or miserliness people. They use the word miserliness. I'm having, I had some dental work done, there's some lisping going around. I'm sorry about that. But that's the offering. I dare declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time. That is, it's not like a confession, in the Catholic way, but what it's saying to me, I think, it's saying, I'm putting some effort into these three poisons and seeing how these three poisons have caused this grief from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. I can take, when you say I declare, it's like I'm taking responsibility. I'm going to take responsibility about my actions. I'm going to be the one that's responsible for my actions now. And the next is rejoice in the merit of ordinary and holy beings. And that is that is the cure for jealousy. Jealousy is part, these three poisons come into there's branches of each poison, but jealousy is mentioned as one of the worst emotions you can cling on to. Please, Guru Buddha, remain until the end of cyclic existence. I don't know where existence went. That's for times you've been disparaging to the Guru, thinking bad thoughts. I don't want to go see, I don't want to go to that, I don't want, it can be those types of things because what's in your mind, that's what counts. So if you have, bad thoughts to the Guru, you will say this. And then, and turn the wheel of Dharma for all sentient beings. That's the antidote, one of the antidotes for ignorance. We've given a lot of different antidotes for these things, so it's not like there's only one. And I dedicate any merit I might achieve to become enlightened for the benefit of sentient beings, and that is to cure doubt. You doubt that you're going to become enlightened to benefit all sentient beings. It's overwhelming to you that anybody could be responsible to benefit all sentient beings. It's scary to think that I'm not going to be enlightened until everybody is, and you looked at certain people and then you didn't realize all the insects, what have you. But that is what you're saying, and what you look for is that this helps to relieve doubt. Now I want to also say another thing about dedications. This is part of the seven branch prayer, and when we do the next class, we're going to show an exact teaching, not a teaching, but the exact sutra. This is in the early parts of any teaching, of any. When I say any teaching, I'm talking about all the different deities that this is in. That's part of the first of each and every one of them, the seven branch. But then at the end of these practices, and we'll cover that next time, is dedication. And it's important to dedicate your merit all the time, because if you don't, it kind of gets lost. If you ever want to know about dedications, look up Lama Zopa Rinpoche online and type in dedication. You'll get tons of information about dedications. He's got a very, very insightful way of explaining a lot of this. So we do you do those things. You can do that. That's part of every practice. But there's only the Chenrezig is the only deity that you don't really need to do all this to practice or be empowered. We'll talk about those things in just a minute. But you do refuges. You do the refuge. You understand refuge. This is the preliminaries to Tantric practice. Before you can do these deity yoga practices we're going to be talking about, you need to have these. This you need to be doing under a, your guru. And the thing is, first is the four thoughts that turn the mind. This is the outer. Keller Rinpoche, there's a great book out. I forgot who's. It's about beginning Buddhism, and this guy went to study with there's a bunch of them to study with Keller Rinpoche, and he was talking about some of the these wonderful yoga's teachings that he has students up in the cave doing, and he said, oh, we're going to do something today, and these people get so excited, and the thing he would do is he'd say, okay, let's go back to the four thoughts that turn the mind. And they, this guy says, I was so disillusioned at the time, but Keller Rinpoche knew exactly what he was doing, because this you definitely can become an enlightened being if you just practice this under a guru. I really want, when I say that you can become enlightened, you need to be under the direction and guise of somebody that really knows what they're doing. But the thing is that you really get to understand precious human rebirth's advantages. And we've talked a lot about precious human rebirth, and I've talked about how miraculous it is that you are here listening to Dharma, not just by me, but if you listen to Dharma, you pick it up from other people before me. But, you are very blessed to be living in this time and to have this precious human rebirth. And the advantages, the main advantage of rebirth as a human in the human realm is you're not going to become an enlightened being in any other realm. And the truth of impermanence, we've talked about it. We understand that everything ends, nothing is permanent, including ourselves. We see about being rebirth's advantages, but we know we're not going to be here forever. So when you understand that, I'm here, but I'm not going to be here forever, and while I'm here, before I disappear, I need to really understand karma and how it works. We talked a lot about karma. We did a whole class on karma. And also then we understand the pain of samsara. It's painful to be here. And, it's not like every day's hell or anything like that, but, you realize I've been chasing my damn tail all my life, and I'm going to chase it to one degree or another, until I figure out a way to get out of it. And that's, what Dharma can do. That's the inner practices. And then after you've got yourself, very well versed in this, then comes the fun stuff. It's called Nandro. This works on the inner. And, we talked about prostrations. Well, you do 100,000 full prostrations. Some teachers can let you do half prostrations. Most want full prostrations, 100,000 of them. And that cures pride. We talked about that ago. And you really get a lot of, prostrations are a very interesting way of getting, of working out. Let me just put it that way. You do 100,000 of the 100-syllable mantra of Vajrayana that purifies hatred and aversion and cleans up your own karma. 100,000 of Mandela offerings, that is to, helps you become not so attached. It deals with attachment. 100,000 of the Guru Yoga prayers, that is to, it's the antidote for delusion. I mean, you put this much in Tonglen meditation. We did Tonglen last session. This is a lot. I'm doing it again, and it's not fun. And it's not supposed to be fun. I'm not trying to say, I'm a martyr or anything, but it does. It will do what it's supposed to do. And I want to, first of all, if you're a Galupa practitioner, you get to do this throughout your life. You don't have to do it all before they're going to teach you deity yoga. But everybody else, you're supposed to finish all of this before you do any of these practices with other deities, before you can do the Chinrenzig practice without. Keller Rinpoche was very big about that. And the past and present Keller Rinpoche are very big on Chinrenzig practice. Now, the other thing, then when you've got all of this done, but you need a transmission, an initiation, or an empowerment. And the transmission, we've discussed, that would be the Guru reads you the text that goes with the practice. And there's either an initiation or empowerment. Initiations are, it's a day long, it's very, you don't necessarily know what's going on. There's usually, several people, in the case of Kalachakra, 20,000 people are around there, being initiated by the Dalai Lama. The empowerment is it's very similar. What it is that the teacher has bestowed upon you the right and the energy. He feels that you're responsible. You do the meditation that's going to be part of this initiation or empowerment, and then you are able to be practicing the deity yoga. And that's what we're going to be talking about after this. I forgot. We're going to go through this fairly quickly and get to what you probably want to be talking about. But I mentioned about the Shingon. And there are the Chinese and the Japanese. There are still some very strong Vajrayana sects. They're not very big, and there's not that many, but they're still very good devout practitioners. And this is the 5 wisdom Buddhists, and they figure in many Mahayana. I mean, we're going to talk about Padmasambhava a bit, but this represents the 5 qualities of Buddha, and that's turns the wheel of Dharma, protects, magnetizes, enriches, and pacifies. That's the 4 qualities of Buddha. These are the main deities in the Shingon. That's the point I was hoping I made, that their practice is not so much these other deities. Their practices are the 5 Buddhas. And the center is Virachana. He turns the wheel of the Dharma, and that's, again, every time we see turning wheel of Dharma, that's the cure for ignorance. The east is Ashogabaya, that protects and deals with hate. West is Amitabhava, magnetizes unselfishness. Amitabhava figures big in the Tibetan tradition too. And if you recall last session, we talked about Amitabhava and the Pure Land. Well, this is not, we or they, we agree to see Amitabhava and define Pure Land differently. You are told about going to the Pure Land in some of these practices, and some practices have direct. You're directed straight to Amitabhava, and to talk about the Pure Lands. The south is Retinasambhava, that enriches, and he helps you with pride and greed. That's what these people help you with these. When you go and you do the practices of the meditations on these are what the deities will help you with. And north is Amagashahadi, Hashidiya. I wish I had all my teeth today. He pacifies and is a cure for jealousy. He doesn't get as much attention. I think he really deserves a little bit more, especially in the West. The big Buddha you see in my living room, that is who it is. It's Amagashahadi. Those are the 5 wisdom Buddhas. So now let's talk about what probably most of you are curious about, and that is deity yoga, practicing the deities. And first let's talk about what a deity is. These are, what would you call, like Shenrenzing, a pure? He represents all the Buddhas, past, present, and future. Their love and compassion is just, that's him. Or Kuan-Yin, it's her. They are the manifestation of all of the Buddhas, past and present, love and compassion. So they are admitting love and compassion for you. And when you do these things, you're going to, that's what Chenrezig does. Chenrezig is the most hands down favorite deity in all Tibetan Buddhism, and a lot of it has to do with Dalai Lama and Karmapa both being emanations. And they're not the only ones. I understand there's quite a few more that I don't know about. But Chenrezig, that's very, very big. And so with these peaceful deities, I'm going to go through and talk about what when you do these practices, but let's talk what this practice is. You know, I talked about that first and then seven-branch prayer, and then you get a text that will give you instructions. You read it in Tibetan, and there's an English translation, and you visualize doing these things. And the visualization is going to be that, now if we're doing the practice and it's Chenrenzi, and we're going to do that practice in 2 weeks, we're going to go through it of what it's like. And the way it is, if you practice it and you've not had the empowerment, you're supposed to be empowered to practice any one of these, except Chenrenzi. That's the only one you don't need really the empowerment. But if you do it and you're not empowered, instead of becoming the deity, you watch what the deity does. And if you have been initiated or given the empowerment, you become the deity. And you do what the deity is, best known for. And then you come back. It's not like that. It gets, some people say you've got some really crazy ideas. I mean, so basically, can you just become Chenrenzi? No, you don't. It's not anything like that. You just, during this practice, you become the deity, you do what the deity does, and what it is it's like you're getting a practice. The deity becomes you, and you're practicing what the deity does. And, the Tibetans look at Chenrenzi as the cure-all. If you ask any Tibetan teacher, if you had nothing else, what practice would you do? I guarantee you most all of them would say Chenrenzi. That was the one, and Kalu Rinpoche and others have said, even if you're not empowered, you can do Chenrenzi practice. Now, Chenrenzi, Alkivishvara Kuan Yin, he has the most well-known mantra of all. That's Om Mani Padme Hum, which we're going to go in. We're going to do a lot with Chenrenzi in the next session. Let's make sure there's okay. Yeah, we're still good over there. The next is Manjushri. This is this guy here, and these deities. These pictures are taken from Thangkas, and some of you have seen ones I have, and you've seen them probably other places. But they are paintings framed in a silk brocade. And these Thangkas, there's specific things that each one of these deities are going to do. And there's a few things, there will be different colors on some of them. It's important what color they are. And they'll have certain things that represent what they do. Manjushri, no matter what these manifestations of Manjushri, colors of Manjushri, wrathful part of Manjushri, but he has the flaming sword right here. And he's cutting through ignorance. And that's what, when you're doing the Manjushri practice, it's a lot of cutting through ignorance. And the thing that looks like a flower, he's actually holding a book. And Manjushri is definitely the one that people go to help with ignorance. Ignorance is a very big thing that Manjushri can help you cut through. Manjushri's mantra is Om Rapatsanadi. That's his mantra, Om Rapatsanadi. And it's important, mantras and stuff we'll talk about in a minute. Green Tara, there's several colors of Tara. I know of 21 for sure because there's a practice called 21 Taras. The most prominent is Green Tara, and she's the one that's here to help you. A lot of talk about helping you through lifetimes. If you have fear, Green Tara, if you're in a fearful situation, you talk about, so you can do the Green Tara. These mantras that each one of these have, that instills the essence of the deity. And so if you know the Tara mantra and you are in a fearful situation and you say Tuata Tara Turasava many times over, that will help you with the fear you're having. If you're dealing with some things with the wisdom stuff, maybe you're doing Manjushri. In most of these practices, there's a point in the practice that you're going to do a certain amount of the mantra of each one of these deities. And this is just, by the way, before we get to Vajrayana, this is so, there's more deities than we can even imagine. Because they're not all, we have no idea how many deities there are. These are the ones that we know. And these four are the primary peaceful deities. But, each of those systems, a lot of what you're doing the Nandra for is not so much for these held all deities. It's some for the higher tantric practices. But Tara, White Tara, she's very well known. White Tara is, she assists with long life, and she represents that. Vajrayana is the bodhisattva of purification. He has the purifying capabilities of all Buddhas, past, present, future. Now, Vajrayana, oftentimes he's seen in consort. And most all these deities can be seen in consort. That's, in sexual bliss. It's not graphic like that, but you see the union. And that's what, they're talking about, is understanding, the bliss. I'm starting to talk about some things that you need to be talking about with the teacher. So, Vajrayana deals with purification, and we're going to talk about the Vajrayana practice, because that one you don't have to be empowered to do. And it's important because it's in just about every one of the practices at some point in time. But these are the four standard peaceful primary deities: Shenrenzing, Manjushri, Gnitara, Vajrayana, and they can be many colors. I know there's a red. There's a practice I've heard about with black Manjushri. Again, all the colorful taras. And Vajrayana, most of the time I've seen Vajrayana, it's with him and the consort. So these are the peaceful deities, but then we got some that are not so peaceful. These are the wrathful deities. And these things, you don't find much online about this, and that shows you that the people that have taken these empowerments are respectful enough of what they've done, because this stuff does not belong in the hands of a beginner. These are very advanced practices. I'm not trying to say it's anything to overwhelm you, or that because I can practice it, a few of them, that it's not anything about that. It's just that you're not going to understand it until you've been around the block a few times, and you've got a teacher that can work with you to understand, because these very complex visualizations, and certain things mean certain things. Certain things mean certain things, excuse me. But let's talk about, these are probably the three most known. Going back to the, I was talking about the primary deities, the peaceful deities, they all have a wrathful form. The guys that looks all serene, that Manjushri character, Manjushri is looking so nice, and he's got the sword though, but his wrathful manifestation is Yamantaka. And Shenrenzing looks so nice, but his wrathful, there's many different types of Mahakala. Mahakala is basically, in many ways, a protector of all the different sects and traditions. They all have some part of Mahakala. There's different colors of Mahakala, different numbers of heads, different numbers of arms. And the thing about this is that each one of these arms, they're symbolic. And when you understand the teaching and the practice, then you realize this all makes sense, what they're holding, why, what they're doing. A lot of times you see wrathful deity practice, they're stepping on something. But we'll go with Mahakala. Like I said, Mahakala comes in many different colors. This blue, it's, they say that these deities, most of them are black blue. And everything in his hand is representative of something. And when you're given the practice, you'll know what those are. And most of them always are wearing human heads as a necklace. But Mahakala is very, especially in the Kagyu tradition, and he does have a lot of the protector issues in protector. He helps a lot with protecting in the Galupa sect. One of my teachers said to me, Rinpoche here said that there are some things that he just knows that he was protected by Mahakala. And that is a fairly common deity here. There's the white Mahakala, and there's up here some other deities. The next is Palden Lamo. She's pretty much on her own. She's not a manifestation of anybody but her own self. She's also the consort of Mahakala. And, we'll go talk, because you see it's graphically here. These deities are always inflamed. They always come with flames. And Palden Lamo, she's always riding a horse, and she's carrying a bag of disease, is what it says in the sutra. And the thing about Palden Lamo is that I think it was first Dalai Lama was meditating at the lake. There's a lake that the Galupas do meditations, that they get visions. That's how they find a lot of these tulkus. Because that's the thing, somebody's got to find these reincarnated teachers, and there's different ways that they look at this. But Palden Lama is the protector of Dalai Lama. Palden Lama is the protector of all of Dalai Lama. And she's also one of the protectors of the Dharma. Now, the next wrathful deity is Yamantaka, Vajrabhairava, or Yamantaka. And this is a fairly advanced deity. This is a fairly advanced deity practice because it combines a couple of like mother and father tantras. There's very few that have mother and father tantras, and that's all you need to know for now. He is the most wrathful of all. One thing I can tell you that I saw somebody else. If you look very closely at one of these arms. Let's see. Well, anyway, on one of these arms, he's holding. I think it's this one there. He's holding a man on. He's pierced the man, and the body's still on one of the arms. Yamataka has many, many arms, 32 arms, 18 legs, 7 heads. But the symbolism of of this man is that if you practice Mahakala, there's 5 sins. 5 sins that are one of them killing your mother and father, something killing a teacher. There's 5, and I can't think of the other 3 right now. But if you practice Mahakala, that can be, you can purify the karma that would cause. These are like 5 things that really you should never do, and it's all around killing. But that's the 3 of the wrathful deities. Those are 3 well-known wrathful deities. And see, the thing about why, well, you ask, well, why are you having wrathful deities? Can't these peaceful ones do it all? And what do you need these wrathful characters for? You need them because what they do is they teach you how to use negativity or anger, how to channel these things into something productive. And they take a lot. I think the thing about all of Tibetan Buddhism that is interesting to me, and it has been my experience, anybody I've talked to, is the more you do some of these practices, the more you get out of it. I mean, they grow, as you grow, the practice grows. There is no doubt in my mind. I mean, there's certain things I've done like clockwork, and after a while, I look back at how I viewed things, and by doing this practice, things change. That somebody is on the right track when they they think, as long as they know that their practice is growing as they're growing. If you think you outgrow the practice, I'd do some serious sitting. Nobody outgrows a practice. We talked about Gyalpo Rinpoche teaching the Dalai Lama. He still practices, and it's we all have different negative issues, and the wrathful deities are how you work with it. So we're going to talk about Vajrayana. This is a practice that anybody can do. And by the way, when I say these things about we're talking about this, first of all, this is instruction I'm giving you that you could probably find in many different places. I'm giving you, though, a little bit of what my experience has been, and from people I've talked to and people I've worked with, what their experience has been. But it's this we're going to do today is you're going to get something out of it. But it's best when you get the instruction from your own teacher. Have a transmission from your own teacher. It will be much, much more. And Vajrayana is the bodhisattva of purification. And the thing about it, people first of all say, well, can he purify karma? He purifies karma's effect. He doesn't purify the cause. That's still up to you. He purifies the effect. And it's important to understand that, because later when we talk about this, it's like, why do you have to do this so many times? He takes care of the effect. He doesn't take care of the cause. And that's what, by doing this mantra, what it does. Like I said, it doesn't make the karma go away, but it purifies the effect that the karma act would have, that would normally be. So, you don't know. This is the most important thing right now to remember is he doesn't get rid of karma, he gets rid of it. He helps with the effect. This is a very important thing if you've taken any, if you've taken refuge or any Dharma vows. I didn't mention that. When you take a vow of bodhisattva, that's a vow, and then most of the higher deity practices, you take a tantric vow, and then you have to take, for some practices, you have to take the deity's vow. So, you've got, like this Kala Chakra, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 things you've committed to. And you'll find that this mantra is also through all the practices, but you say this mantra. Excuse me just a second, I get some water. Why it's important is if you've taken these vows, you're going to break a lot of them, and you don't even know it. And some of these, we talk about this because bad habits, let's talk about this bad habit down here. Bad habits or constant problems you have are most always caused from past lives. That's why you have that problem. And you're still having it now. And you might be so ingrained in you, you don't even know it's the problem. And you keep doing it. Well, you keep doing it, it's up to you to find out how to clean up the karma. But you have Vajrayana helping you with, you don't have to do the math. It doesn't mean that, well, if the effects I'm being affected by it, why would I quit doing the cause? Sometimes you have to have the effect lessened so you can maybe understand the cause. This is a nice way of saying you can learn maybe with a little bit less pain. And the other thing is that you'll find this mantra in just about every practice. And some part of the practice that we talked about, even, I don't think it is not part of monastic practice. But, and many times you will see this in the sutra, and you're doing it, and you do this sometimes 1 or 3 times, and it's, saying, okay, I may just be screwed up my visualization, I, did the wrong mantra at the wrong time, and this is, to say, okay, we'll clean this up. We understand, if you're worried, I'll tell you what I ramble around my words here. What I really like about this is he's saying, no matter what you think, your ego is telling you screwed the thing up. No. I'm here to tell you you didn't screw anything up. As long as you've done this thing, don't worry about it. So, this is, like I was saying, you do this because you don't even know if you are having a problem, or this is a problem. Or, you might have stepped on 4 or 5 ants. You've killed something. You do this mantra. What a lot of people do, and I'm going to suggest, there's 2 mantras for Vajrayana, short and long. The one you do when through the practices of other practices, you do the long mantra. And when you're doing the mantra, the 100,000, you're going to do the long mantra. So let's get to the okay. The short mantra is Om Vajrayana Hom. Just Om Vajrayana Hom. Now, if you're around me or a lot of Tibetans, we don't say Om Vajrayana. It's Benzo Sato. Om Benzo Sato. And that's the same thing. The Tibetans just didn't say Vajrayana, they said Benzo Sato, and so that's in most. If you're reading texts that are Tibetan, you're going to see Benzo Sato. But that's the mantra, and what I think I recommend, it's helped me a lot. At the end of the day, I stop and I think about, I've done my practice, or it could be part of the practice, evening practice. I think about things that I do know that I've been, maybe I was angry, maybe I, had an issue with somebody and it got out of hand, or, I told somebody that I, was doing something because I didn't want to go to lunch with them. It could be bad. Maybe I hit somebody with a car. Hope I never do that. But you do 108 of these mantras at the end of the day, and you can kind of look and reflect, and it's bends itself to home. The major mantra, the 100-syllable mantra. Now, some teachers say that they're both equally good. I do 28 of these at the end of the day, 100-syllable mantras. I do 28, and I visualize for myself. I visualize that the mess is coming out and going out into the ground, and then that's just my visualization. You can do whatever you want, but it's Vajrayana Samya Manupalaya Vajrayana Denapotitha Didomi Bhavahava Sutokeo Me Bihava Supokeo Ye Mihava Anaratu Me Bihava Sarvasiddhi Mi Prayata Sarvakarma Susame Tistam Srim Kuham Ho Bhagavan Sava Tathigari Vara Mahame Mense Vara Bhava Maha Samya Sata Om Ha Fe. Hum Fe that's not part of it. That's the end of a lot of different mantras. You just go Hum Fe. It means there. I've done this, it's protected. But that's the 100-syllable mantra. And you can find this online. I don't try to say this to just, go and look online, because half the things online there's some really scary stuff online. But, 100-syllable mantra, and this is also one of the mantras that could be, you talk about mantras. Some mantras, they translate, and you can understand them. Other mantras, you forget it. They're untranslatable. But, this is a major mantra. Like I said, it's going to be, if you do some Tantric Buddhism, you're going to see this. This is going to be your old friend, Vajrayana. And, that will be something that I think would benefit you a great deal if you just even did the 108. I've given you a few things that I hope give you an idea about what Tantric Buddhism or Vajrayana Buddhism is really kind of about. I've tried to give you an idea of what the practices are, the foundation of what practice is, what the deity is, and some ways to clean a few things up. It's when Kalu Rinpoche says that thing about it's like a plane from LA to Los Angeles. It's a very, very busy plane. It's a very, very busy plane ride. And I'm not trying to say this to sound all-knowing or to, scare or intimidate you. But if you're going to practice this, what I've shown you is the very minimum, what you could do. Especially with the teacher. But a teacher is going to wonder why you might not want to do the others. But he gives you the foundation of what's going on with this. And I hope it's been somewhat beneficial for you. This is always my pitch here. We want to make these classes and programs by donation only. We've got some good evening lectures coming up. One with addiction, we're hoping to have somebody from each of the schools, Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana, a little discussion. And you can make a big difference in the lives of the entire community. If it's LGBT community or young community, contributions help our social programs. You can see the Nalanda, lbgt.org. You can go there and see exactly what we're doing. That is the web page. And, you know, this is an opportunity to invest in your own future. When you're talking about, you know, and this is what I'd really like to try to emphasize. It's not necessarily the how much you give. It's how, why, and how you give. If you give from an open heart and you do it in an altruistic way, that's wonderful. It's not the size that counts. It's how it is. But that's you can find that on the web page. That's the contribution. Or if you wanted to send a check, some people wanted to do that. That's 535 South Curson, 2D, Los Angeles, 90036. Your tax deduct. These are tax deductible donations, and I always look at it this way: I would rather give sometimes money to something I believed in than necessarily write a check to the government. And that's just my own view of things. But I hope to see you in the next class. That's going to be a lot about Chenrezig, and not just Chenrezig. I want to understand that we're going to put some Kuan Yin in there. I mean, it's wonderful that you see that the deity can manifest in so many ways. And I know a lot of my friends that are Buddhist or have a Buddhist inclination of how Kuan Yin, how special and touching that deity is. Kuan Yin is, you know, just as any place Kuan Yin goes, she or he, you know, is just they're adored. They are the epitome of goodness to somebody. I mean, it's the Chenrezig and Kuan Yin, both of them, no matter which way who they're dealing with, it's a really important part of a certain part. Excuse me. They're very important with certain parts of certain practices. Hope to see you the next time, and thank you.